Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. This podcast is dedicated to EAS employees of the U.S. Postal Service and members of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and join us for today's episode. And now, here's your host, Robert Wakefield.
Good morning, Branch 32, and good morning to our EAS friends across the country, and especially those listening at the Northeast Region Training Seminar in Puerto Rico. Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast, presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I'm your host and president of Branch 32. My name is Robert Wakefield. Thank you. Yes, indeedy. Oh, yeah. That is always so much fun to do. All right, we've got a great show for you lined up. I hope you'll hang around because we're getting ready to pour that first cup. You know, banking should be made simple. That's why Ollie, the Nashville Post Office Credit Union's virtual assistant, is here, ready to help 24/7. Need quick answers? Ollie delivers secure, instant solutions right at your fingertips. No wait times, no hassle, just smart banking made easy. Whether you're managing your finances, exploring loan options, or just need guidance, Ollie is always ready to assist, wherever and whenever you need. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. And for our first cup this morning, I just have to say, what a week legislatively. What a crazy week this has been. We're going to get into all of that stuff today. We're going to be talking about the big, beautiful bill that has some reconciliation language in it. We're going to talk about that today because it's important. It affects all of us as EAS employees, as postal workers, as federal workers. This is a bill that's got some consequences to it if we're not careful. Thank goodness we have a legislative staff up in Washington, D.C. with our resident officers and Bob Levy, who does an excellent job of making sure that we are informed about issues that can affect us from a political standpoint. That is so important. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But let's talk about this big, beautiful bill that's in the Senate. It's in the reconciliation stage and how it affects all of us. So before I want to do that, though, I want to see where we have been. And this kicked off a few weeks back when the House had this idea and they floated out these early drafts of a reconciliation package that focused on one thing, and that was deficit reduction. There's nothing wrong with that. Back when that happened a few weeks ago, the usual suspects were all on the table. We've got to trim the federal benefits. We've got to look at these retirement contributions. And they even floated out the idea that an auction-style sale should take place for the USPS electric vehicles that are supposedly coming on board. Not exactly employee-friendly stuff, if you get down to it. But as the legislation made it over towards the Senate, it started to morph a little bit. And now, as late as this week, I think it was Tuesday, Wednesday of this past week, Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Chairman Rand Paul dropped a version of his proposals, and it was modified to pass under the Byrd Rule. Now, what is the Byrd Rule? The Byrd Rule basically says if it doesn't affect federal spending, it doesn't belong in this bill. So what the senator from Kentucky wanted to do was just bypass all that. And this Byrd Rule basically says stay in your lane. You don't have the authority to make that happen. So they came up and they've modified this so that it could get it passed under the Byrd Rule. So let's talk about what's in and what's out. So here's what this latest draft, as of this recording, and it could change 3 or 4 more times before then, but as of this recording, there is a 5% increase in FERS contributions, but that's only for new hires starting January 1st, 2026. Now think about this. You've got someone coming on board, and right from the get-go, they get a 5% reduction in their pay. That's basically what it is. It's a 5% reduction in your pay. You know, and that to me is just horrendous. How are we going to get people to come to work for the Postal Service if we have this on top of everything else? It's hard enough to get people on board as it is. This certainly is not an attractive thing to put upon new hires, but effective, it's only for new hires, but it'll be effective January 1st, 2026. There would be a 5% increase in FERS contributions. Another thing that made it into this revised Senate language is this: a $350 user fee for postal employees who want to appeal to the Merit Systems Protection Board. Now, this is another hurdle right here, because let's face it, we don't have that many cases. I mean, we have, I wouldn't know the number off the top of my head, of course, but I don't think we have so many cases that go to MSPB that this is a huge issue. Why slap a $350 fee upon someone who is just getting due process? I mean, that's still not a good thing to do. And so far, that's, from what I've read, that's it. Is it still serious? Yes, definitely. But some of the most damaging ideas have been kicked to the curb. So what's not in there anymore? Well, no auction of the USPS electric vehicles. Okay, fine. There's no change, and I think this is important. There are no changes to the CSRS or FERS retirement formulas. That was in the House version. They wanted to do it from the high 5 to calculate your annuity instead of the high 3. So that's gone, and that's good news. They've eliminated the FERS supplement annuity from this bill. And the earlier versions, they were wanting to do away with the FERS supplement. That's the supplement that you get as a federal employee if you retire before you're 62. And it's kind of to tide you over from the time that you retire till you're eligible for Social Security. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. That is not in this bill anymore. So that is still in place, the supplement from FERS, supplemental annuity. And perhaps, I guess this is the most important thing for me, or one of them. There's a bunch of them, but there's no switch to at-will employment for postal workers. Now, at-will employment means that they can fire you because you dress funny. They can fire you for any reason, and you have no recourse. Or you can pay more to the FERS annuity to bypass that. Well, that's not in this bill. So from an EAS standpoint, it's a bit of relief, but there's still plenty of things that's raising eyebrows. So what does this mean for EAS? For those of us who are supervisors, managers, postmasters, retirees, listen, it affects retirees as well. The ripple effect is real. These proposals don't touch current FERS participants in a direct way, but we all know that every layer of the workforce can be affected by this. And that $350 MSPB fee, well, that's just a wall between fairness and due process. We have limited access to MSP as EAS employees anyway. So this is kind of it really hits hard in principle, even if it's not our most used route for justice. But all new employees paying $5 more into the retirement, that is definitely a recruiting hurdle. That in a market where it's already tough to bring in and keep talent, it's hard to hire people to come into the Postal Service anyway. So, where's it heading? And what can we do? Well, the Senate is expected to maybe vote on this by the end of this week. It may have already happened by the time this podcast drops. So the clock is ticking. And that's why organizations like NAPS are constantly urging us to contact our senators now. Not next week, not after the vote. Do it now. There is on naps.org under the Legislative Advocacy Center. You can go in there and you can fill out this quick little thing, put your name, address on there. It'll contact your senators immediately. I would do that today. I've done it 4 times, I think. I want my senators to know I'm serious about this. So I've sent it 4 times. It'll only let you do it once every 24 hours. But that's why we have to get a hold of them now. These provisions, we've got to let them know that it erodes fairness and it erodes dignity in the federal and postal workforce, and we should not let this happen. And it's just not about protecting our benefits. It's protecting our voice, our professional standing, our future in the workforce. And if you're not sure what to say, those templates are ready to go. The talking points, they're all there. Lawmakers respect the clear, and they respond to a respectful message from someone who shows up every day and serves the public. So that's where we are. The big, beautiful bill it may be voted on by the time this drops, but we've got to be aware of everything that goes on on a legislative front. And that's why I wanted to spend the first cup talking about that today. All right, let's go ahead and pour that second cup. Summer is here, and what better way to celebrate and to beat the heat than with a delicious serving of ice cream? That's right, Brian Wagner, did you hear that? We are excited to announce that we will be offering ice cream every day throughout June, July, and August to continue our celebration of 100 years of service. Stop by and treat yourself to a little taste of summer and enter for a drawing for a Ninja Creamery machine at the end of our celebration. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union. People helping people since 1925. And for our second cup this morning, I just wanted to touch a little bit about, I just got a flyer in the mail today about the National Dog Bite Awareness Campaign, which is an important campaign because in 2024, 6,088 postal employees were attacked by dogs. That's way too many. This was an increase compared to the prior year, and the Postal Service continues its tradition of calling attention to this important detail. So it made me think of a time where when I was carrying back in 1987, 88, something like that. I was a mail carrier, city carrier, and I went up we had house boxes on the house and whatnot. And so I was walking up the steps, and a dog busted out of the door. And it was so funny. The dog came out, grabbed my pants leg, and was just shaking its head with my pants leg, just going crazy, back and forth and all that good stuff. He didn't bite me. He just grabbed my pants leg. And here was the funny part. The owner came out and looked at me and shouted, "What are you doing to my dog?" Okay? Well, my response was immediate. I said, "Well, your dog is attached to my pants leg, and if you want to email today, you'll get him off." It was so funny that it was my fault. I was delivering their mail, and yet I was doing something to their dog. It was just unbelievable. So it's a good campaign that the Postal Service does every day, and we have to keep our employees safe, especially with dogs. There are some very serious injuries that take place when people are bitten by dogs. So it is a great reminder that if you have a dog, and of course, and you're listening to this, you're an EAS employee, and you know this, you know how important it is to keep your dogs away from the mail carriers so they can do their job safely. But I thought when I got that, it made me think of that funny story that I was doing something to that person's dog, while they were attached to my leg. Oh my goodness. It's always something, isn't it? So that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for listening to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. Now listen, I have not heard from a branch in 2 months. You know what to do. Like, subscribe. Let me know where you're listening from. Let me know what branch you are. And we would love to talk to you and say hello to you here at the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. That's going to do it. So remember, every great weekend starts with a great cup of Joe. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Robert Wakefield and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. We welcome your questions and comments, so send those to SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com.